Naona magazeti hapa yana mambo kweli leo. Headlines, and for some reason I think we are going to start with the headlines ya magazeti, alafu tutajua ni vipi. Lakini kabla ya hiyo, wacha nialike wageni waweze kutusalimia tujue ni kina nani, alafu ni vipi. Baraka, nitaanza na wewe.
Asante sana Gerald.
Good morning to you, sir.
Jambo, jina langu naitwa Barrack Muluka. Na furaha ya kuweza kuwa hapa leo. Ni siku yangu ya kwanza kuweza kujumuika nawe na wasikilizaji na watazamaji wako. Ni furaha, basi tuwe pamoja.
Who is Barrack Muluka? What's your experience? What do you do in this town? Najua Nairobi sisi wote tulifika. Tulikuja wote.
Nina hustle.
Kila mtu anasema ana hustle.
Mimi nina hustle. Mimi ni communications consultant. Niko na Midas Touch Media.
Wow.
Na hata wewe naweza kufanyisha consultancy kidogo na wengineo wote ambao wanataka mambo ya mawasiliano. Pia ni mwalimu wa mambo ya mawasiliano.
Ni mwalimu pia.
Ndivyo.
Ni vizuri kukuona. It's good to see you, sir. By the time unatoka utakuwa umetufanyia audit ya hii station, tuambie what we need to do better, but you're not going to charge us.
Kwamba unazungumza lugha ya walio wengi na vitu kama hivyo ndivyo unipendeza. Kiswahili unitatiza, lakini Kiingereza nacho unitatiza zaidi. Kwa hivyo ni furaha kuweza kuapa na kuweza kuzungumza kwa lugha iliyo ya wengi.
Thank you so much, sir.
Asante sana.
Really appreciate. Wacha tukimbie kwa EKURU. EKURU, good morning.
Morning, Gerald. How are you? And thanks for the invite again. Yes. I'm happy to come back again. Yes.
Najua umekuwa chairman wa sheria wiki Friday, unapatikana kila wakati.
Yes.
Wacha tukimbie kwa Steve Ogolla. Huyo ndio mgeni. Steve Ogolla, good morning.
Morning.
Ndio utaanza sasa introduction, tuambiwe ni nani.
Like Barrack, I always say I went to school to speak English.
Nice.
And wear a suit like this, so
when I grow up I want to be like Steve.
Steve Ogolla, an advocate, governance enthusiast.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. It's good to see you too. This is your first time on the tackle.
Asante.
And I hope you'll come more. Najua tangu EKURU waonje. Hajai wacha kuja. So you guys as well.
As you can see, I honored the first and only invite. I think it's not really about me, it's about you.
Thank you, sir. We'll be having you more often.
Yeah,
now when you
fine.
roll up next month, we'll be having you. Every Friday, we will having the same panel. Tutakaa chini na EKURU kando kidogo, akufanyia orientation, alafu basi. Officially. Now, for some reasons or for no reason, I think we are going to start with the headlines. Naona magazeti leo na mambo. On the People Daily, there's a story about a guy who was passing by Kemsa. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I haven't.
You have not seen it? Have you seen it?
Since I was told magazeti ni ya nyama, I try to avoid them.
Nimeona tu.
And since the headlines are used to choreograph where the country.
So since Muluka ameiona, tutaanza naye Muluka.
Kuanzia sasa nitakuwa nikizunguka hapo Kemsa kila wakati kwa sababu huyu jamaa alikuwa anapita tu, anazunguka hapo, anapita katika pitapita za hapa na pale. Na akaona watu wanapanga na wanapiga foleni. Akaambiwa, akauliza nini inaendelea hapa? Eti watu wanapewa tenda. To supply PPEs na vitu vinavyohusika na COVID-19. Kufika hapo akasema na mimi pia ninaweza kupiga foleni. Sema ndio, piga foleni. Basi akapiga foleni. Akafika kule ndani, akaulizwa umewahi kusupply kitu chochote? Ndio nilisupply wakati fulani. Kitu cha hela kama kiasi gani? Shilingi kama 400,000 hivi. Ambia basi sasa wewe tunakupa kandarasi ya kusupply PPE na vitu vinginevyo vinavyohusika na COVID-19. Na hii tenda yako ni ya shilingi milioni 180. Unaona hata inanichanganya kwa sababu ni nyingi sana. 180 million Kenya shillings supplies tender for PPEs. A fellow who is just casually.
And what did he say earlier, that he had only supplied a tender for
400,000?
$400,000.
Yeah, a fellow who was just, as we used to say when we were growing up, perambulating lackadaisically. Alikuwa tu yani anazunguka tu hapa na pale, hakuwa na kitu ambacho
sio kutangatanga na kumangamanga.
He was perambulating lackadaisically. Akaambiwa kuja hapa
So is it we hanging out in the wrong places?
we walk in the wrong places. We should walk around Afia House, walk around KEMSA, and other highly placed government institutions.
Unaweza angukia tenda.
Utaangukia.
But thinking about it, Muluka, is it that these guys think we are fools, or this is actually what happens in this country?
I think tumefikia mahali pabaya sana. We are sitting in a very bad place. And the most worrying thing is that these things are becoming normal. We may joke about them, laugh about them, treat them with levity, but we are hurting. The health sector is sick, literally. You have got nurses and clinical officers on strike because of very basic things that any government ought to provide. And yet here is an individual who is allocated 180 million shillings to siphon off. This person was actually just a conduit. He was not an end in itself for a destination, the destination for these funds. These are public funds in times of tragedy, in times of adversity, which those who are charged with the responsibility to take care of our health abuse with impunity, and they know that nothing is going to happen to them. And then extend this thing to the fact that it's been revealed that those who are supposed to be the prefects, the watchdogs in the Senate, in the National Assembly, are implicated in the whole thing. What kind of absurdity is this? And then the rest of us, we don't go beyond lamentation, because even these disclosures, such as what the press has done, such as what I'm probably even doing now, it doesn't go beyond lamentation. I think we need to start being outraged sufficiently to say that we will go to the trenches and we will remove these people.
EKURU, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I'm surprised Kenyans are surprised at this behavior. Seriously. Because, you know, like Dr. Ojuang said in previous shows, you know, here is a story of a slave and master. We have all willingly accepted to be slaves in this country, willingly, and the master is telling us, master is doing what the master wants to do, and all we need to do is cheer. Like, the slave will go to the master and say, do you think I'm sick? It's not about them feeling the sickness. So I think we have normalized many things in this country. We have institutionalized them. Corruption has become, or actually I don't call it corruption now because in my mother tongue I don't know about Muluka and Ogolla, whether there's a word called corruption. But if you say theft, I think we should call it what it is. Theft of public money has become the norm in this country. And the culture of theft is now part and parcel of us. I think we should just call each other maybe EKURU theft, AUKOT, some theft, Ogolla, BARRACK theft, so that our middle name becomes just theft. And the reason the political leadership in this country is doing this kind of things, the public officers are doing these things, because Kenyans have allowed it. They have normalized it. And therefore, it is it's the norm. Nobody's being punished. Seeking political offices in this country is an avenue for enrichment. And if you look at some of the most ludicrous things that have happened in this country, I mean, even going back to, forget even about KEMSA. KEMSA for me is actually mass murder. What they are doing is actually committing mass murder. Because people who steal money meant for the sick, for the dying, in a pandemic such as this COVID-19, are actually committing mass murder. And I think we should, Ogolla, we need to petition our president, Nelson Avi. We petition the High Court to some of these people to be declared mass murderers. Because, you know, as you know, we are dealing now in a state where right now, the government requires of us to pay for NHIF. the National Health Insurance Fund. But they are saying in a pandemic like this, no, you're on your own. Private medical companies are also saying now, no, we cannot take care of that sickness. Meanwhile, even the free masks that were given by this man called Jack Ma, billionaire, have not reached the villages, you know. But
in Ethiopia, I'm told they're in Ethiopia.
But BBI collection forms are in the village, in the wards, with the chiefs. So there is a level of mediocrity in our country that we have actually accepted, that this is the way we do things, and maybe it's just about time we accept. Maybe we are all insane. This is probably Albert Einstein's definition of insanity. We're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results. We are complaining over the same thing, the same people, same institution over again, and we expect results. Because on this story, how can somebody just be perambulating, as Muluka says, around Kemsa, and all of a sudden
And he ended up with a tender.
And end up with a tender worth 180 million. It's I don't think that story is choreographed. I am sure this is an inside job, just like the NYS one, NYS2. That a saloonist will walk into an NYS and walk away with 40 million in a rucksack. Come on, we know government money is kept or controlled under a system called IFMIS, Integrated Financial Management System. So you cannot access money unless, of course, you know, the key decision makers, you know. But you see, this is the norm. Right from the top to the bottom. If they, you know, like they say, fish rots from
the head.
From the head. If the head of a fish is rotten or is rotting, then don't expect anything good on the bottom. Today, billions of Kenya shillings is lost from the very top. So who can moralize the guy in Kemsa? Who can moralize the guy in a parastatal, in a ministry, when the top government officers are actually themselves the culprits? Just need to look at the Auditor General report. It's not a EKURU AUKOT saying. Okay. Look at the Auditor General report. From State House, Office of the President, they cannot account for billions of Kenya shillings. So who can point a finger and say, Ogolla, you account for even, you know?
Let us say.
So sisi tuseme tu hivi Gerald, sisi wote ni wezi katika nchi.
Sisi wote ni wezi. Yes. Ogolla, the fact that actually parliamentarians can sit and listen to such stories. I was just moving around, then I got a tender.
You know, the Kemsa haste fully highlights the inner drama of our governance system. A totally broken system, and one that is lacking in seriousness and merit. I mean, if you look at the procurement laws that we have in this country, how detailed they are, that if you want to supply some equipment to any government institution, you must meet certain pre-qualification requirements. For instance, you ought to have demonstrable capacity to supply wherever you want to tender from. And experience in that area, and your financial and technical proposal must meet the checklist that is always predetermined. So to walk in casually, lackadaisically, the way as Senior Muluka says, and then walk out with the tender, I think fully highlights our lack of seriousness as a country, but it's hardly surprising. I mean, I agree with the EKURU that even in our country that populates the leadership based on the co-option into the club of resource management rather than service provision, then you'll end up with this kind of dramas. And sometimes, you know, sometimes I get fatigued, and then I shift my focus to where it truly belongs. And I think it's time we probably just give these leaders also a break.
Tell us, because he is not escaping.
You know, I think, I mean, for me, this is the thing.
Yeah.
You know, government is organized at the ballot. Government is organized at the ballot. If you present options at the ballot, and then you opt to go for thieves and thugs, I mean, also anticipate massive pilferage and wastage and theft of public resources. You know, during the lead up to the last election, the civil society initiated the red card campaign, disqualifying some people from running for office because they are dubious integrity record. But since politics in this country is not organized around the ideology of service delivery, rather it's organized along partisan political lines, ethnic solidarity, co-option along financial, corruption and manipulation and homeboy mentality, you get to get leaders who do not deserve to be in those positions, and you get to discourage and demoralize leaders who would otherwise. I mean, you're looking at a presidential candidate just right here who has the vision and the vigor to provide the leadership that we need. He wrote this constitution. He has a detailed and he has a clean record. And you know, when people like EKURU present themselves for leadership, what you do is to mock them. Does he have the financial muscle to mount a campaign? And experts will tell you, investment over investment in money is part of our problems. Because when you're going to organize government at the ballot, and you allow people to spend freely, and they don't get to account where they've got this money from, then you know, already you are creating some environment for compulsion, for corruption post the election. Because nobody, I mean, right now there's no campaign. Why can't someone just come and dump money here? I think this, where we are, is within Kibra constituency. There's no movement here. If you look at the last by-election, there's a lot of movement, a lot of money dumping, you know, to try and influence or alter public choice processes. Then the very people who have been subjected to squalor and a life of desperation will pick that money, vote for those leaders, ignore leaders that have the right mindset and the framework, and then after the election, then they start complaining. I think I just want to caution Kenyans. I always vote the right way, and I make peace with that. If the majority want to vote for full Santa, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I think it's time it's about time we also begin reflecting at an individual level. And part of this conversation is to desensitize all of us from making choices based on ethnic solidarity, you know, or the influence of mind.
Just a very quick rejoinder to what, and I want to remind Wakili Pia that there is the other reality in our country today. That one, the political leadership in this country have started the psyche of the Kenyan people. They know our national psyche. They know that in a way we are sick when it comes to political choices. We are psychic, so they invest a lot in that. And secondly, there is the other reality, which takes me back to the wise words of Joseph Stalin, when he said, those who vote decide nothing, but those who count the vote decide everything. And I think that has become the culture in Kenya today, where the choice of leadership actually is not happening at the ballot. The organization of government is not happening at the ballot. It is for those people who actually count those votes. And that's why you can see, even going towards 2022, the clamor now is that we must have a new electoral management body, which we call IEBC, because they want to choreograph the kind of government they want. And because they know Kenyans will not rise up and say no. And there's also another major problem. The people we now condemn to be leaders in this country, they know that the intellectuals in this country, or the people with the know-how, hardly participate in politics. The people I call the political illiterates, because they say, I hate politics, I don't want to get involved. But they do not know that from political decisions come, you know, those decisions that affect, for example, healthcare infrastructure today, whether we can actually combat COVID-19 in terms of, do we now have enough technology in our homes, because our children are now doing what's called remote learning and teaching, remote teaching and learning, and all those things. So it affects all of us, the businesses, the economies. Like I keep on saying, right now, we know that about 7 million small businesses have gone under during this COVID-19. But nobody's talking about it. They are talking about, I mean, this is the only country, I think, in the world that is not even thinking about buying vaccines. In Britain now, they have started vaccinating. In the in Germany, in other countries, including China. China is actually supplying vaccines now to many countries. Yet we borrow a lot of money from China, but we cannot even tell China now that this thing ilianza kwenu, si at least mutupatia ta vaccine as a loan first. In fact, if I was Uhuru, this is the first loan that will make sense.
Finally.
Ambia Chinese, tafadhali, tupatie tu loan ya vaccine ndio Wakenya wasikufe, tuendelee kuomba pesa kwenu.
All right. Very quickly, I'll start with you again, Muluka, on the issues of the doctors. My L is coming out from the central Kenya, you're almost there. Now, the issues of the doctors. We've seen doctors have been complaining about the fact that they have not been cared for the government. The other day, we lost a 28-year-old doctor. The body is still hanging in the morgue because of a bill of 1 million. The story of the family is very harrowing. the things that they've gone through, try to save the life of that doctor, is quite something. We've had arguments from leaders. Raila Odinga said, for instance, that you guys need to be more understanding. We have better things we're dealing with. The economy is sinking. We are dealing with a pandemic and all that. You've also seen someone like a governor from Western Kenya, where you come from, telling these guys that, you guys be patient. Tungoje kwanza BBI. The doctors are still complaining. We are continuing to lose a number of them in their
Call him by name. It's Governor Oparanya.
Yes.
No, it's called,
Not Oparanya. Ojamong from Busia. Yes. Let's call him. Let's call them out.
To go through. The president has remained completely mum on this issue. What are your thoughts? Very quickly.
You see, my two colleagues are talking about organization of government and government being fashioned and rallied around the ballot box. And then, of course, Dr. AUKOT is talking about the silence that sits in the ballot box, while the people who are appointed as mouthpieces of the ruling class make certain declarations. It boils down to the fact that we have in government what we call government organized criminals. It's actually organized crime, mafia in charge of affairs of state, and they are not interested in the public. They are interested in their own wicked and perverted welfare. We are essentially, therefore, talking about theft as the primary objective of being in government, and everything else being disguise. That when we see people who may walk us through ceremonies of state, such as we expect to see in 2 days, is it tomorrow? Tomorrow is supposed to be Jamhuri. That is just a choreography. They do not really identify themselves with the public, and that is why a matter of such importance as the very essence of our life does not seem to count to these ladies and gentlemen, if I may use what is an oxymoron in this context, because they cease being ladies and gentlemen. They're basically thugs who are smartly dressed, who drive big and good elegant cars, who live in leafy suburbs. They are honorable criminals, if you want, who are in charge of affairs of state. And so it doesn't matter to them that doctors are dying, and that as doctors die, Kenyans are also dying, and that hope keeps on receding on the horizon, because the primary business of state for them is theft. When we talk about and against that which we call corruption, and I think Dr. AUKOT has put it spot on, it's actually theft. When we talk about it and complain about it, the people who hold the levers of power are wondering what we are complaining about, because they are there essentially to steal. And so we must get back to ourselves as citizens and ask ourselves, is it possible that we hate slavery, but we love the slave masters, and that when the slave masters come to us, we will go with them whichever way they tell us to go? When you look at this collection of BBI signatures, what is it about?
Sickening.
There are people who are signing papers that signify nothing to them. They have not understood what change they seem to be asking for and where it is going. And in another few months' time, we are going to be crying again about and against the BBI. Then there's the docile, in fact, let me call it the apathetic middle class. People who think that if you could fashion a highway in the middle of garbage, and that highway leads to an island in the middle of that garbage, and you occupy that island as your home, your abode, and that is the territory in which you are conducting your affairs, you can forget about the rest of the rot. It was William Shakespeare who was wondering about a rose on a dunghill? What is the value of a rose on a dunghill? And this middle class, the Kenyan middle class, the educated class, the professional classes, the tax-paying classes, on which the burden of the funds that are stolen every day sit, must wake up. They can no longer start asking questions like, what is AUKOT doing in politics? Why does he think he wants to become president? What is BARRACK MULUKA doing with politicians in politics? We must disrupt these people, and we must give this country a new direction. If we can't, then let us stop lamenting.
Hi, EKURU, what are your thoughts? We continue listening to these guys.
You know, I totally agree with Muluka, and I think for me, let's just bring this battle back to our very doorsteps. I think the problem actually is people who are in the know. To be honest, I have come to terms with the fact that I will no longer blame Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, Raila Odinga, and there are many, many surrogates. Yeah. Because when these guys wake up, that's all they know. That's their oxygen. You cannot take away their oxygen from them, otherwise they will die. But you and I who wake up morning, drive to work, work very hard, make sure that our children go to school, make sure you pay your mortgage, make sure you support the extended family, and yet we are being overburdened. I mean, look, my experience during this COVID-19, and I mean, all of us here who we are professional in our own ways and we work hard, we know that many of us actually have had very serious financial deficit. We are actually on a survival mode in this country. So one of the things that I hope that we, the intellectual, the middle class, can actually do is to now ask hard questions. What are the priorities in this country today going forward? You know, that will even ensure that we have a country. Because the way we are going, to be honest with you, I'm getting scared actually. And one of the things that is scaring me right now, Bitok, is if things go the way they are, our children are growing faster, probably even faster than us. I'm actually scared the day my children will ask me, Dad, where were you with all this supposed knowledge, my doctorate, whatever, when we inherited this country? You know, that scares me. And I think as a parent, as a responsible citizen, all of us should be scared because, you know, as a student of forced migration, let me give you an example. I have visited many refugee camps, you know, in the region and parts of the world. And I've seen in those refugee camps, I've met former generals in the army, bankers, attorney generals, lawyers, lining up to receive a food ration from the World Food Program. A small, you know, this is what will,
in hovels.
Exactly. This is what will happen when we do not reconstruct our country. We will all find ourselves actually in refugee camps, and there will be no country. You can today claim that you've got billions of Kenya shillings stashed somewhere in a bank. When shit happens, and excuse my French, when that shit happens, you will not even have the opportunity to actually go and withdraw that money. You'll be running for your dear life. This happened in 2007, 2008, post-election violence. People who had the means, you know, and when their homes were being burnt, they just had to run for their dear lives. And so since then, people have not recovered. And this is exactly where this country is being driven into. We have a very irresponsible leadership at the very top. We also have an irresponsible citizenry, as OGOLLA alluded to, that they make the wrong choices. You know, today people are blaming, for example, Mike Sonko in Nairobi. But they elected him. You know, these kind of leaders are actually a reflection of us. So leaders only have one vote. I mean, EKURU only had one vote in 2007 and even in 2017 election. But you see, if people, you know, I think tuambiane tu kweli. Nafikiri kuna uchawi fulani katika nchi. I mean, witchcraft I think is real. Because what happens to Kenyans, ukifika kwa ballot box, ukiona your ballot box, somehow something happens to you. And we also make the wrong decisions. Look at the management of our election, for example, which actually results into this kind of leadership that we are lamenting on. Our election is probably one of the most expensive in the world. I studied how much we spent, for example, in the 2017 election. Can you imagine, OGOLLA and Muluka, that we actually spent 2.5 billion Kenya shillings to print our ballots from a desert country called Dubai. They don't even have a forest. Yet we have so many forests here in Kenya, and you know, paper comes from
producing paper.
But we cannot trust our own factories to actually print our ballots. But we put But that's not the point. The point for me is we put into the economy of Dubai 2.5 billion Kenya shillings.
Wow.
Every 5 years.
Every 5 years. We put into the economy of France, was it 3.8 billion for those BVR kits.
Yeah.
Yet, France does not even use those BVR kits. In fact, France just goes to a A-size A4 paper and asks Muluka, you want to run? Gerald, you want to run? You want to run?
Yeah.
Some OGOLLA, you want to run? Wanaeka tu hapo, unaenda na tick. In fact, you vote as you go to work. They don't even close businesses. But in Kenya, it's a whole...
Everything has to stop.
It's a whole ceremony. And so for me, we need to re-engineer, reorganize even our mindset as a country, the way we make decisions. And if you look at the fallacy in Kenya, the idiocy, the stupidity of our people, that mtu wetu lazima akue bunge.
Yeah.
But you know, I wish I could even see many of my relatives lining up in State House, because now mtu wetu wako State House to receive some honors.
Huwaoni
But
na kuna huo uozo.
What are your thoughts, Steve?
There's a serious problem of socialization and conceptualization of our participation in politics and governance. If you look at the way we are socialized, politics, and the panelists get it really well, politics, our participation in politics is because we want to get something out of it.
yes.
And so when we retreat back to our community, the way we are socialized is that we are sending one of us out there to go and get part of the national cake and begin to and redistribute it back here. So then it becomes, it's about what you can get out there and then bring it. You know, the way some of us who come from Western region is like, when you talk about going to Nairobi, Nairobi is considered like a huge forest. You just go to hunt, and then you're required to, you know, go and share the spoils back in the villages. I think there's a fundamental problem with that, because then it provides the firepower to the political elite to continue manipulating and patronizing the electoral, so that it's not possible for you to think beyond the ethnic political leaders, you know, that champion your cause, because no matter what they say, you've already characterized them and identified them as the saviors of the community, and you want to support them fully, so that when they go there, they have a higher bargaining power. Karisa Maida, I think in 2004, was it 2000? I think 2004, somewhere like that, he complained bitterly to his constituents at the coast that why don't you be like Luos? You know, to Luos, Raila is always right. He's always right, especially when he's wrong. So express that solidarity with us. And you know, there's a bit of desperation. There's a bit of desperation in the way we play our politics, because...
And he was made the minister for...
Yes.
Is it... what was that ministry called?
So, as long as we feel beholden to our political leaders, they'll continue manipulating us for their own partisan political gain. Now, the question of the integrity and the outcome of the electoral process, of course, you can expect the 2022 election will be more expensive, because the election is a function of trust. The lesser the trust in the system, the more expensive it becomes. You know, you want more security features because you don't trust IBC, fine. That comes at a cost.
Yes.
At that time, you say, oh, we pay. So then, you know, there's a moral and ethical concern. When you look at how much you're spending in election, I don't think it's even fair to blame the IBC for how expensive elections are. We should blame the political elite who create a climate of fear and doubt on the part of the election manager that then makes the election manager not to respond by increasing additional budget lines that we do not actually need. Germany conducted an election alongside a marathon. I mean, even in the US that is now being disputed, people are not on the streets.
Yes.
You know, they're just having conversations, expressing their views, but life is going on. I think we've not moved beyond Kriegler's observation that in Kenya, election is a matter of life and death, literally.
I think Ghana is also a perfect
I think this country has been
Cote
tested.
d'Ivoire, same thing.
Our capacity for barbarity is well established in this country. We can never doubt it. And I think if we don't change the organizing philosophy, the handshake hasn't even cured it. The handshake has just sugar-coated or we addressed it. The real problem actually is the problem of looking at politics and power as an opportunity to grab money, to grab wealth, and share a bit with your communities, but largely most of that wealth remains with the elite. And until we realize this, we will never be able to move beyond the current. This country will remain stranded at the margins of time because of the way we frame our participation in politics. And I agree with EKURU that the middle class in this country are a terrible disappointment. I mean, there are people who are totally removed from the reality that they pay taxes and they don't want to be involved in pressing for accountability. In fact, if I say that I want to run for political office, the first question the middle class will ask, do you have the money? Or am I unacheza too? You get? And if I come with money, they're like, yeah, fine, everyone wants money, you know. So it's fine. You know, in Joshua, if you check the book of Joshua 24, verse 15, is it 15:24 that says, you know, as for me and my family, we shall serve the Lord. I think at one point I made a decision that in the middle of all this chaos, I think change can be incubated at a personal level. Have I ever paid a bribe? No. Have I ever demanded or taken a bribe? No. Then I'm fine. Do I vote along ethnic lines? Am I patronized by our ethnic leaders? No. Then I say, okay, fine. If the entire population wants to be subjected to political domination because you believe your regional kingpin is going to hunt for you, that's fine. That's for you to decide. But do not co-opt me when you start complaining. And I think I like the views by Dr. EKURU in the sense that sometimes when we blame the elite so much, we camouflage the problem. There's a bigger problem down here among the voters, among the citizenry, and they're not admitting it. People must begin to admit that until we disrupt the philosophy from the bottom, change will not come from the top.
And I think maybe the other, just a quick rejoinder.
As I throw it to Muluka?
Yes, as Muluka comes in. You know, I think part of our problem really is that even as we identify, and I think I'm just trying to enrich the argument by Wakili, even as we say that, okay, the problem is these guys at the top, who actually don't care anyway. They don't care. I mean, that we have to accept. But then we also have the vulnerable masses, yeah, who have fed some opium of sorts, and they become really political sycophants, politically sick. But the question is, and maybe now we need to bring this challenge back to us. Now that we know and we can analyze this, we can see, why don't we give leadership to these masses? It's about time now we actually get involved. How many of us, for example, I'm being practical now, how many of us actually sit down our families, our relatives in the villages and tell them, you guys, you now need to make this decision. You know, we must now give that leadership. We must rise up. Because for me, like OGOLLA said, some of the people who really beat me down in 2017 were my friends. People you hang out with, people you party with, you know, people you buy each other drinks, you know, your family friends, club members with. They told me, no, you're wasting your time. You're a Turkana, how many numbers do you have? I swear, I was told that. So kutoka kwa watu, unatoa wapi kura? Kwanza Waturkana ni wangapi? And some of them even told me, but how many Turus are in Nairobi? You know? I was asked many ridiculous questions by colleagues who we are complaining about corruption, about the state of the roads. So anyway, Muluka, I think for me, all
right, before we go to the conversation now, the elephant in the room. Now, our good guy, Chief Justice, is bowing out. He bows amidst a conflict with government and the executive and even directly with the president. We have disagreed. Chief Justice Maraga is finishing his term. He has lamented severally about the influence of the executive in judiciary affairs. He's complained about budgeting and all these other things. But he says he's going out a proud man, and he's going to go and try in Nakuru. He's saying he's at peace with his conscience. Now, when you look at the things that he's been, he was the first person to nullify an election in this country. I don't think it has ever been done before.
It's historical.
Yes.
What would you say about this man who is going out with? Do you think he's achieved much? Little achieved, but a lot of integrity. Do you think he's achieved?
I think to go out with your head raised high is itself an achievement. It doesn't matter whether the doubters of the day agree with you or come along. In the fullness of time, history is going to assess and judge this generation. And it is going to judge Chief Justice David Maraga in a most honorable and a most dignified manner. I think that is very important. He has fought a good fight. He has finished the race. And even as he goes into retirement, he has left us some very poignant words of wisdom. He has asked that we pray for the person who is likely to take over from him. And he has been able to diagnose the problem, the challenge, and place it before us. What he didn't do was to bring in the angle of eternal vigilance on the part of the citizens, basically because he's not an activist. We saw we had Chief Justice William Tunga, and many times the political class used to demonize him and say, oh, the Supreme Court is now populated by activists, by civil society. In fact, they even started calling it evil society. First, that civil society needs to wake up again and to pick up the thread where it left off. Part of the challenge was that in 2002, 2003, civil society was subsumed into government, and many of them, when they got into government, they also seemed to like that the taste of what they found on the gravy train. So we lost them. Then those who remained have also been arm twisted and have been hit largely into submission in the fullness of time. That is part of the challenge. Part of the challenge also is that this game is being played between the elite and the lower end, the massive population at the lower end. And there's the sleeping middle. This sleeping middle is what we must continue addressing, because no change happens when the middle class is complacent. When the middle class is deluding itself with the illusion of comfort that when the roads are bad, I can buy a 4-wheel drive for myself. When the school system is bad, I can take my children to a private school. They say that when the hospitals are not providing the requisite service, I can go to a private hospital or fly out of the country. We must get to a point where we are seeking to have that which is best for ourselves here. And the middle class must wake up. No change of any meaningful nature, no revolution, in fact, in history, has ever taken place without the sleeping middle class waking up first. You can look at recent happenings in places like the Philippines. You can look at what happened in Europe in the late 1980s, early 1990s. The middle class had to wake up, and I think it is not far, because in any case, when you can no longer service that mortgage, because the mortgage belongs to the middle class, when you can no longer pay that fees in international schools that you send your children to, when you can no longer put that 4-wheel drive on the road, when the rent cannot be paid because rents belong to the middle class, then that middle class is about to rise. And as a warning shot to the elite who are in power, you can keep ignoring the sounds that we are making. You can keep on ignoring the writing on the wall. But your damnation slumbereth not.
But Muluka, let's have this. Let's make this interactive. Wouldn't you then agree that there is a level of idiocy even among us middle class? Because you think because you can afford a 4-wheel drive or live in some leafy suburbs or send some school, that you are actually suffering more. I'm in a group of friends that are actually interested in mental health in this country. Because one of the things that, by the way, we are not discussing here, I mean, we should be discussing one of these days, is how people are mentally sick in this country. They are stressed out. People are committing suicide because those things Muluka as enumerated are actually hitting them below the belt. People now have got suffering from high blood pressure, depression, committing suicide. serious divorces now. In fact, as I've done a couple of divorce cases myself, and Ogolla will tell you, one of the grounds for divorcing now is not even timpango ya kando. Yeah. But, seriously, the number one is financial stability. It's no longer even about cheating or these other things. It's actually financial stability, and therefore it's causing people distress. And it's precisely because of what Muluka has said that we do not interconnect this body policy decision and the things that we are going through. We want to live a good life. We want to take our kids to the best schools. But it comes with a lot of stress. I mean, we are not multi-millionaires in this case. Yes, we try to work hard, but the system is actually distressing us the way we do things. And for me, there I say, therein lies another problem. Can we today say, as one of the most educated countries in sub-Saharan Africa, that we actually have an education which we apply to our decision making? You know, which we apply to change the context in which we live. I think for me, there is a level in which we can accept. Yeah. We are not educated.
What are your thoughts on Maraga? Maraga bows out.
Well, I think for me, Maraga, I like the fact that while he has been bold, he's been able to put certain things actually on the table, whether people agree with him or not, even to gather the courage, you know, to nullify that election in 2017. Yes. And one of the things that I think I learned from Maraga, even as he was nullifying that election from, say, a Supreme Court perspective, he actually went back into his value system. If you remember his words, his opening remarks, that he says that something about the fear of God and something, I can't remember the exact words. He reflected inwards. What do I believe in as Justice David Maraga? He said, if this is my value system, I cannot run away from that for political expediency. And therefore, he went to boldly announce that nullification. So the second thing that I will remember Maraga for is the courage to pen that letter to the president and tell him, Parliament has failed to pass a law to bring gender balance. Dissolve Parliament. I mean, that's really bold, and I think Maraga has actually raised the bar a little bit higher. And I can tell you, next week I'm in a Zoom conference with the Supreme Court of Mali, and one of the things they actually want to understand is what guided the Supreme Court of Kenya in making the kind of decision it made, because it impacted on a political transition.
Yes.
So Kenya, what Maraga has done for us as a country is that we are actually now becoming a case study in terms of what led us into making this decision. And I think an event stemming from Maraga, let me also just bring in another judge that I admire, Justice John Mativo. If you remember the contestation around the repeat election, you know, where, again, the Handshake brothers actually had all captured IEBC, and that they forced IEBC to only gazette the two of them. Yet there were 6 presidential candidates. And according to the Supreme Court judgment, if you recall, under Article 140 sub Article 3, the election was a nullity ab initio, as if it never happened. Therefore, go and repeat it, afresh. Those are the words. But see, when the same political suspects went and captured the Electoral Management Body and gazetted themselves only and excluded the 6 others, I went to court, if you recall, and Justice John Mativo gave a very bold judgment, which for me I think speaks a lot about the manner in which this judiciary, I mean, we're not saying everything is perfect in the judiciary. There's never perfection, even in us as human beings. But I think what Maraga has done, even those 2 events alone, for me, I think will remain in the annals of history, and we'll remember him for just the courage to tell the president, I'm sorry, this parliament has failed, dissolve it. This election was irregularly and illegally transmitted. I'm nullifying it. Period.
Ogolla, how do you think is to judge Maraga?
My prayers and blessings go with CJ Maraga as he proceeds to retirement. He's done an excellent
closer
job.
To your mic. Pull your mic a bit.
Yeah, I'm saying that my prayers and blessings go with CJ Maraga as he proceeds to retirement. He's done an excellent job in a very poisonous and difficult political context. You remember that the CJ has been complaining bitterly about defunding of the judiciary, which is a terrible thing, because the judiciary is an anchor to our democracy by our constitutional design. The judiciary has been defunded, it has been delegitimized, called Wakoras. He stayed strong. I think at one point, he said he couldn't take it anymore. He started speaking for himself and not waiting for other people to frame to how to defend the judiciary. That kind of desperation was timely for that moment, but it also indicts us as Kenyans, because, you know, in terms of courtesy and committee between offices, you shouldn't be having the judiciary and the Chief Justice and the President through the Attorney General caught up in a bitter exchange, of words, not so courteous words. It doesn't. Okay, but you see now when you're pushed to the limit, and you're constantly, routinely being bastardized, you've got to reach a level where you can stand and fight for yourself. He's done an excellent job. I think insofar as the nullification of the election is concerned, it's a big win, but I think there's not been a follow-up. The thing is this. Yes. If you look at the way our laws work and our political context, the Supreme Court cannot nullify an election and then nullify the fresh election again. These are the practical reality. So there's some action points and follow-up within the entire political infrastructure. If the Supreme Court reading the law and preserving the integrity of the electoral process and the outcome, and arriving at a conclusion that the election was managed in a manner that offends the Constitution and orders a fresh election, and then as the key petitioner, you then refuse to participate in that fresh election, you delegitimize that fresh election, you bastardize the entire electoral process, you put the judiciary in a very difficult and painful position, such that even if there was reason to nullify that election, they say, hey, wait a minute. Our role is not, I think democracy should be incubated outside courts.
Yes.
Our role is not to mature our democratic processes. Our role is to apply the law. So I think the political leaders have not harnessed the potential that existed in the nullification of the presidential election. Actually, they demoralized the judiciary. I can tell you, at their hazard, we will wait a very long time before we can see another nullification. Because all of us need to be co-opted in the philosophy of compliance with the Constitution. You can get a positive order, then you don't act on that order, and then you corner the judiciary next time to be proactive. I mean, we talk. The thing is this. The law is not removed from common sense. Neither are judges immune to reason. They will look at the political environment in which they operate. Then they look at the law. Then they will identify the disjunction. Then they'll begin to ask themselves difficult questions. Do we want to nullify an election and then be bastardized by the beneficiaries of that nullification, who then also, because of the handshake politics, can also begin to take a position that antagonizes the judiciary? The position of the ombudsman and the confluence of ideology between the political elite really betrays the independence of our institution called the judiciary. And I think they are taking notes. We will demoralize them, and they'll reach a level where they say, we want our judges to sit here without even drinking water, writing papers, printing, because funds have not been disbursed. The CJ Maraga said, if you look at the infrastructural development going on, it is from donor partners, and he said it more than once. He said it more than once during the launch of the online e-filing system, and I was there. The CJ said, if it was not for donors, the kind of development, the building of courts that we are seeing would have stalled. It's a terrible indictment on how we understand governance and the relationship between the executive and the judiciary. I really, really fear. He says, pray for the next Chief Justice. I dare say, the next Chief Justice must learn lessons from the reaction of the political elite from the nullification. In India...
we shall revisit the moment.
Yes, in India, if you look at the population, and there's something good happening in India which Kenya can learn. It is the population that always defend the election manager, the population, the citizens that always defend the judiciary. If you defer to the political elite to frame for you when the judiciary is right or when they are wrong, when they are chorus, when they're doing a great job, to frame for you when IBC is right, when IBC is wrong. It's just oxymoronic or paradoxical, if you like, that the IBC that was earmarked for disbandment has been told to conduct the referendum successfully. And
it is it's one of the items in that referendum.
One of the items in the proposals.
I agree with the there's a problem with the middle. I can sympathize with the poor in this country, because when you're caught up about chasing bread and butter, whether you sleep hungry or not, you may not have time to pontificate in detail how to restructure or reorganize our governance philosophy. But the middle class that drive all the way to work, and all you do is to complain about traffic, complain about trips, talk about English Premier League, talk about all this, until you get more intimately involved in the governance architecture of our country, you will continue to pay the ultimate price. And ultimately, we will suffer, all of us. The poor will suffer, the middle class will suffer, and then there will be no country.
So we're heading there. Finally.
We talk.
Muluka,
Somebody Kinyanjui Wanjiku just reminded me,
Yes.
if you may,
Yes.
what the words of Maraga, because I think this is really very important. Because when he was making that decision, he somehow retreated back to what values he holds as an individual. And this is what he said, that, and thanks Kinyanjui Wanjiku for reminding me this, he says, the greatness of a nation lies in its fidelity to the law and constitution, and above all, fear of God. Yeah. And one of the things that we have not done in this country, we have not even lived by the 10 commandments. And I think that's one lesson Maraga actually reminded us.
I
what
think
values
we need to amend it. We need to amend the 10
you know, no, we clamor to amend a 264 article document, but even the 10 commandments alone, we don't live with them.
Muluka, now we are getting to the second hour.
Maybe just to say something. The problem here with the 10 commandments, the value system, you know, it's actually, if you look at Article 10,
Yes.
it reflects the level of our desperation in this country. You have a constitution that is so disparate in terms that it has to itemize what it considers as our values, national values. It's a terrible disjunction that, should I know these values as a matter of fact, you know that I'm Steve Ogolla, I believe in this, and you know, and this is what we believe in as a country. Then I have to look at Article 10 and say, no, wait. Article 10 says patriotism, and now Bibi has proposed an inclusion of now burdening my mother who lives in the village to be Pan-African and to care about what Malawi talks about.
And legislate good manner. Now, as we roll to the second, we are rolling to the second hour. That's a conversation. Now, let's talk about the issues in the country. BBI, and that has to start from the bottom now, from what has happened yesterday. Then we roll it back to how did we really get here? Why are we here? And do we really need to be here? Yesterday, the signatures were submitted by NASA guys, but led by Junaid Mohammed, and we had some other guys from Kanu and all that. Our good guy from IBC, Chebukati, say that your good brother, he has said the only time I'm going to work on this thing is when we get funding. It will be a very interesting place to be in. When we're talking about not having money to get insurance for doctors, you know, to fund the medical sector, I mean, it will be, and I think this guy is throwing in the jibe to the government. You've given me this, now show me where the money is. Pick it from there.
I think our priorities are certainly upside down. We're trying to walk on our head while our feet are up in the skies, and assuming that that will make us a better country. I say this basically because if you go back to the whole BBI handshake process where it began, and you have asked that we go to the beginnings.
Even before we roll to that will be the next conversation. But now Chebukati is saying he wants money to verify the signatures.
Of course, he must have money to verify the signatures. And I've seen that there's been a bit of a spat between him and one of the BBI brothers, that he has indicated that overall they will need about 14 billion shillings for the proposed referendum. And Raila Odinga says that he thinks they will need 2 billion Kenya shillings. I do not know where Mr. Odinga has done his budgeting and how he has reached that conclusion. But needless to say, they will need funds. I do not know whether it's the 14 billion that he talks about. We have been told that in this country, the such opportunities are also gravy train opportunities. Everything tends to be inflated. So I would not be sure of how much he needs. I also don't quite understand what we mean by signatures, because I cannot remember any time that as a voter I have given the IEBC my signature. Maybe I forget. But the lawyers...
They signed me in. I was signed in.
They signed in EKURU. Anyway, EKURU. Hold it there, Muluka. EKURU, let's restrict it there. The issue of Chebukati asking for money. Do you think where the government is... Where is the money? Where is the
First of all, you know...
Are we going to get a loan?
Actually, I think
the signatures?
I'm having the last... I'm going to have the last laugh on this one. Now, I've just done little calculations here.
Yes.
If 1.4 million signatures that was submitted by Punguza Mzigo Kenya last year took Chebukati 5 months, let's do some calculation. How many months will it take for 5 million signatures that BBI has done? Just done a quick calculation, it will take 17 months to verify. Yeah, and it's true. Muluka is saying IBC does not have a depository of signatures, but it has a depository of IDs and names and where we vote from. So Chebukati is right, because Chebukati used the same argument in our case. He said, I don't have money. And they wrote to Treasury. Treasury told them they don't have money. And there was a constitutional requirement that you must actually verify these signatures. Now, we know that UKURU attorney has said that we are broke and that we should prepare ourselves for hard times. So first and foremost, they should tell us, in fact, we should even now demand the 14 billion that is assigned to BBI. Where is that money coming from? Unless they use the same money, because the verification is part of the referendum, then they should apportion Chebukati part of that 14 billion to begin the process of verification, if they want the referendum to go through. But I can also now warn Kenyans it will take 17 months to verify 5 million signatures. That will take us to what? From now, we're talking about early 2022.
Quite deep actually into 2022.
Yes.
When we should be going
for
preparing
into
general elections.
Yeah.
Exactly. Restricted there. Chebukati wants money. Do we have the money?
You know, we don't have
Money
the
on the
money.
box.
No, the thing is this. Many Kenyans may not know this, but IBC is heavily defunded. It's starved of financial resources. Remember, we are at that transition period where IBC had already indicated that it had commenced, or that it had intended to commence the boundaries review. It made a proposal, Treasury refused to release those funds, claiming that since the referendum, the boundaries review could be done between 8 to 12 years, why don't you do it after the next election in 2023? Therefore, trying to micromanage the decisional and functional independence of the commission. So in terms of the verification of signatures, if you want to hold a referendum, and EKURU is right on that, spot on. The process of verification, because now these are things that have timelines in the law. If you commence, the moment you present the signatures, actually now the law commences. Now, and there's no reverse gear until it fails at one point. So IBC needed to have been supplied with the resources prior. And the chairman is right in demanding the money, and you can't tell IBC that we're going to give you 2 billion. That is again the kind of lack of respect for an independent institution. They have to give you a calculation of how much they need to conduct the referendum and the preparation to the lead up to that referendum. So the Treasury must now release the money. It's not about political rhetoric anymore. They must release the money. Otherwise, IBC must also tell us, how are they going to verify these 5 million signatures? Are they going to hire more staff? Are they going to train them? Because it's not the commissioners.
No, Ogolla, I can tell you for a fact, when they were verifying PMK, they hired over 100 clerks. I was there. Yeah. They were doing it at that institution. 100 clerks. It's a very laborious exercise. Yeah. But this discussion cannot end without us pointing out the mischief and the hypocrisy of the promoters of this referendum.
We're heading there.
They have been bashing IBC and saying that IBC must be replaced. All of a sudden, they now trust IBC to be able to verify the signatures. No, we must call out this hypocrisy.
On the money, just to conclude that
conclude the money, so that now we go to where you guys want.
Let us be clear. And this time, let us stand with the commission. The verification of the signatures submitted by BBI will not commence until and after Treasury has released the full amount to cover the referendum if we get there. Right. You cannot say that you're releasing piecemeal, because they need to hire staff, they need to be trained, and then IBC then give us a timeline. Already, Dr. EKURU has already indicated to us that verifying just 1.4 million signatures took about 5 months. I can tell you with clarity, the earliest time we can have a referendum in this law, if things were done the right way, is probably 2022. Together the general elections, or even beyond.
All right. Muluka, I'll bring it back to you. Now, you've understood the process that we had towards Constitution 2010. It was a very laborious process that took us almost 30 years. And the conversation was out all over the country. Everybody felt like we had a feeling that we needed a new dispensation in terms of the Constitution and all that. Do you feel we have a constitutional moment? First,
I think that any law-abiding society has ongoing constitutional moments. It's a constitutional moment on any waking day. As we wake up, it's a constitutional moment. As we gravitate through the day, it's a constitutional moment. As we go to bed, it's a constitutional moment, because we live under the law and rule of the Constitution and constitutionalism. Let us get that right. Is it a moment for an omnibus overhaul of the Kenyan Constitution? I don't think so. I think constitutions can be audited. We can look at where we have come from. We look at that institution, how it has served us up to where we are. We look at where we want to go, because we must very clearly understand where we want to go. And we know that this is the mother institution when we look at all components and instruments of law, that this is the mother of them all. And therefore, like the mother bee, it has got to be very, very well functional, but it has also got to be protected. You see, when people in the political class are assuming office, they are made to swear. They take sacrosanct oaths and say that, among other things, they will defend the Constitution. And that is because of the primacy of that institution. Therefore, when we get ourselves into a situation where a couple of individuals who exercise certain political power are marshalling us, bulldozing us through a marsh, and saying it's going to be like this, whether people like it or not, that worries me. It cannot be a constitutional moment. In fact, it is an extra legal moment with regard to the manner in which this thing is being handled. You ask about the past. How did we do it in the past? There was, of course, also contestation. And President Moi was trying to exclude Kenyans from that process. He wanted to own it with the political class that served under his tongs and hammer in parliament. But Kenyans refused. And that's how there emerged what we call the Ufungamano Initiative. And with the coming into being of the Ufungamano Initiative, even after President Moi appointed Yash Palgai as chairman of CKRC to spearhead the process, it could not begin until after Yash Palgai had negotiated with the Ufungamano team, until after he had brought all this together. And this is in spite of the fact that there was an act of parliament which gave the legal framework that then pronounced the process, that timelined the process, that gave legitimacy to the process. This thing that we are having, and I use the word thing deliberately because it is an amorphous thing whose even ownership is not known. If either President Uhuru Kenyatta or ODM leader Raila Odinga have a whimsical moment and they decide that they have pulled out of that process, it will collapse because it does not have the necessary legal institutional framework that has made all of us owners of the process. And that is why one day we hear that the spacecraft is already in outer space. It cannot be brought back. Then the next day we are hearing that the owners of the spacecraft are trying to recall it so that they can load it with more cargo before it takes off again. It's mischief. This thing is mischievous. It's mischievous. It is a lie. It is actually driving autocracy. And if in the fullness of time what is contained therein becomes real, then we are now going to institutionalize that autocracy that is being attempted by the BBI process.
But I think again, Bitok.
You have a considerable woman?
Yes, we also need to be very brutally honest. I need to repeat something I've said severally here. Let's ask fundamental questions. What really is new with BBI? Because when this thing started, and Muluka and I were in a show elsewhere where I said that BBI started as a good lie, a feel-good lie, that let's establish what ails this country. And the truth be told here, Bitok, there are many commission of inquiries and reports today gathering dust that have since established the problem with Kenya, even starting with, for example, the way we organize election. Kriegler in 2008 said that if we don't fix the manner in which we manage our election, 2007 will look like a Christmas party. And we don't seem to be learning. Justice Philip Waki established the problem with post-election violence. A Kiumi report, Ndungu established matters to do irregular and illegal allocation of land. OUKO report, I can go on and on and on. There are so many reports in this case. Truth, Justice and Constitutional report. All of those reports establish the problem in our country. One of the problems that BBI is glossing over, and for me, I think you're sure we say things as it is.
Yeah, sure.
One of the problems that I don't see in BBI is how do we deal with people who incite violence post-election? Because that's part of the problem. That is what endangers our country today, that you have individuals who believe they must be in government. If they are not in government, then the country would remain ungovernable. If, for example, you remember the Machozi Monday, when I read the report, and I told you, I've not finished reading the BBI report. At some point when I read it, I get so disgusted, I throw it down. Because if some of the things tells me, you should be proud of your skin color, as if I've had a problem with it. Let's retrace the root of our ancestors, establish reasons why they came from where they came, and why they settled in Kenya. I mean, some very ludicrous things. But for me, I think we should also be able to say, are we now forgetting the people of Wagala, the Wagala massacre? Because in the TGRC report, it established this is part of our problem, the marginalization. So I think one of the, even as we read this BBI, even as we are being chaperoned into a monolithic, discourse or approach or thinking, let's also say, what about that report that actually said some individuals' lands was taken, and we spent, again, taxpayers' money in those reports? And that for me really is a fundamental question that we cannot sweep under the carpet anymore.
All right. Ogolla, do you feel we have a continual moment? Are we pregnant?
I think BBI is solving a false conflict. It's a lie not well covered. Because if you look at the framing of the issues, the original idea was to broker a political truce between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. And then now they morphed that into a political conversation to keep Kenyans busy. But then they took a dramatic twist of changing the constitution. But just for the record, the idea of changing the constitution in and of itself cannot be a bad idea, because the constitution anticipates that from time to time we should be able to look at it. And the idea hazard that our constitution should not be so rigid as to make it so difficult to change, neither should it be so easy as to change it whimsically. And that is why we have entrenched provisions that require referendum. Then we have simple provisions that Parliament can amend. Now, the dishonest part in the conversation, or the idea behind the idea of amending the Constitution, the political elite, and I just say Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, having been co-opted into a philosophy of excluding William Ruto from accessing power in 2022, have connived and have generated a plan that keeps us busy while achieving that political intention. Now, if you want to change the constitution, you must precede it with an honest audit. And you can't sit somewhere, create a steering committee, then tell them, collect views from Kenya. That is disrespecting our institutions that we've mandated and we pay for. We have sectoral players. If you want to know the status of human rights in this country, you have the Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights. If you want to know the level of what Kenyans feel about public service, you have the Commission on Administration of Justice, the Ombudsman, that receives public complaints. If you want to know the internal challenges within the judiciary, you have the judiciary itself and you have the JSC, and so on and so forth. Have we had a constitutional moment where sectoral players, including Parliament itself, combine their report, and then we have a master report that then says these are the legal gaps, these are the constitutional gaps, these are the administrative policy and culture issues, so that we can see what set of problems can be resolved by a conversation that does not require reopening the constitution. But the way we are doing it right now, the entire constitutional moment, the way the political elite have framed it, it's about forming some groups of political leaders in a manner that excludes another group. And you know, it's oxymoronic that you want to include by excluding.
By exclusion.
I think that's dishonest. I have read the report, the full reports, and I have read the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020. I can tell you, we can do without amending the Constitution at this moment, because if you're talking about increasing the funds flowing to the counties, the Constitution already provides the threshold
At least.
of 15%, at least 15%.
At least.
Nothing stops those decision makers to enhance it to 30%. Because if you say that the only way we can push it 30% is by amending the law, what if you want to push it to 40% and so on and so forth? You're going to have to be looking at the Constitution, amending it all the time. If you're talking about inclusion at the executive level, the creation of the office of the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Ministers, and the office of leader of opposition do not necessarily animate inclusion better than the structures already anticipated by the Constitution. The executive comprises of 25 persons: the President, the Deputy President, the Attorney General, and up to 22 CSs. Why don't you start with the low-hanging fruits?
Wakili, hold your thoughts there. Hold your thoughts there. There's something that as part of the mischief. Why didn't Uhuru Kenyatta push for a constitutional amendment in 2013 when he created the positions of chief administrative secretaries? Because that was an expansion of the
It was an
executive.
opportunity for him to do
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Now,
So
I want Ogolla, you're doing well. Now, you've actually, I think we've hit that discussion on the constitutional moment. Now, you guys, all of you have read the document. All of you. I'm sure Muluka has read. I want to give you guys a free will and a free way to debunk the document in your best way. The best and the worst.
Well, as you know, I was already telling you, that as far as BBI organizes the executive and framing it as inclusion, I find there's a problem there of conceptualization framing. It's a lie not well covered. If you want to, we have a majoritarian system when you are electing the president. Ultimately, the president will be produced at the ballot and only one person will emerge. How about, first of all, you will desensitize each other around not voting on ethnic lines, so that the ethnic minorities, which the Constitution isolates and demands protection and participation from, can have a decent chance. But I said, with the executive comprising of at least 25, of a maximum of 25 persons, how about you start animating inclusion in the executive by having the president as Kikuyu being as he is, the deputy president as Kalenjin as he is, the attorney general maybe a Luo, then the 22 slots for CSs, pick from each ethnic minority, so they can have a voice also. But look at the way the executive is populated as it is. Look at the failure by the president to implement Justice Onguto's judgment that even in the next election, following the next election, which was 2017 election, a simple thing just like achieving a gender threshold, he has refused to do so.
It doesn't need a constitutional amendment.
If you're talking about animating inclusion in the National Assembly, there already exists mechanism, and what they needed to do under Article 100, and you're aware, we needed to pass legislation that provide for marginalized groups. And the Constitution has already defined what marginalized groups really are. Ethnic minorities, marginalized communities, women, youth, and persons living with disabilities. All these groups, if you create a legal framework that ensure that they have representation in Parliament, you will be complying with the Constitution without changing the Constitution. If Parliament has already said, and they've said it, the former Auditor General, Edward Ouko, said that Parliament has refused to approve the audited accounts. They have refused. You don't need to amend the Constitution to approve that. So when CSC is doing allocation, they're doing allocation based on the last audited account, which was 2014.
Of almost 5 years ago.
I represented the Law Society of Kenya at the Supreme Court in this division of revenue matter. And if you look at the posture taken by Parliament, especially the National Assembly, it doesn't inspire confidence. What I'm saying is, there are many ways of looking at what ails our country and what we can do to resolve those issues without arriving at an abrupt maneuver to alter the constitution. I don't have a problem if Kenyans vote to change the constitution. The problem I have is this: let us vote to change the constitution knowing that we are altering the constitution to benefit the political elite. Because if you want to benefit the masses, we can do so without opening the document. I am totally opposed, just to be sure, I'm totally opposed with the ongoing constitutional moment. You know, I'm totally opposed to the referendum because of our practical challenges right now, the money involved, and lack of a detailed audit. If it is possible, and the world will not come to an end if we shelved the Constitution Amendment Bill 2020 and had a conversation that helps us identify how do we build more unity and cohesion and compliance with the law without opening the constitution.
Muluka.
We don't have that moment right now.
Yes, I have challenges with both the process and the substance. The process in the sense that this thing is becoming extremely polarizing, and even when it's not very clear which individual should stand at the other pole, you have people being told, if you do not agree with us, go and stand at the South Pole. We are the North Pole. When the church says that, wait, let us have a conversation, there are still issues that could be tackled. They are being told, no, if you don't want, go to the South Pole and let us meet at the ballot box. When other political voices also express concern. And, you know, ordinarily, you didn't hear that in the Punguza Mizigo. We did not tell EKURU, AUKOT, and Third Way Alliance that wait a bit, we want to add this, because they did not have the kind of draconian political muscle that the people who are sponsoring the BBI have. It is taken as a matter of course that whatever they want will go, in a sense that we have surrendered to dictatorship, that we know that if we don't like it, we may not necessarily have the capacity to stop it at the ballot. So I'm worried about the process. It's also true that when you look at the origins of this whole process, it was supposed to be a healing process, that we will not fight again during elections, that there's going to be inclusivity in government, that we are going to have a sound national ethos. But what you are seeing is a case of people who think that they can put out a fire by lighting other fires. So the process, therefore, worries me. When you look at the substance, I have elsewhere said that to me it is a sugar-coated poison, that the coating is full of sweetness. You are told that there's going to be moratorium on student loans, something that does not belong to constitution. You are told that we are going to have tax holidays. You are told that so many women are going to get into the legislature through some very ludicrous processes, as Dr. EKURU, AUKOT would say. And many other sweeteners. The thing about CDF, the World Development Fund, things that are meant to hoodwink what are considered to be critical constituencies, so that they can support this thing. You saw at some point governors were also coming on board and saying, we want retirement benefits, we want to have I don't know how many cars and to be paid so much money after we retire. It is those sweeteners that then disguise the poison that is at the heart of this thing. Are there bridges? Yes, there are bridges. There are bridges for the executive to make incursions into the judiciary, for the executive to make incursions into the legislature, that are bridging the executive into purely autocratic space, that even such things as the vetting of cabinet secretaries in future to be ministers, it's been taken away. The president will now appoint a cabinet that we have no say over. In the present dispensation, Parliament, even a lame duck parliament such as the one we have, treats us to the drama and the motions.
A lame duck is even better. This one has no legs.
Okay, a legless.
A legless duck.
Yeah, duck. Like this one that we have. It takes us through the choreography, the motions of vetting presidential appointees. It's a good thing that we have in place. The present parliament under Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta may be whipped at parliament, it may be intimidated, and it may do as the president wishes. But the very fact that we still have that institution and that we have that constitutional provision that bequeaths parliament with certain authority is good going into the future, because there will come an opportunity when Kenyans will have leaders, elected leaders, who are more assertive than the caricatures that we have today, and they will exercise that power. But that power is now under threat of being taken away. That you have then a president who appoints a prime minister whom he can sack, who appoints a cabinet that he can sack. You do not see the legislature having any role any longer. And then the bloating of that institution of parliament is a very, very worrying thing. And they're not talking about it truthfully, that you could end up with upwards of 600 legislatures. Where in the world the population such as we have, on the basis of the draconian executive, on the basis of the bloated parliament, whatever other sweeteners there may be, for me as Barack, it's a no-no. And if I find a camp that is going to be saying no, I will join it. And if there isn't one, I will put one in place and lead it.
Sure.
For me, very briefly, for as you know, I've been opposed to BBI right from the very beginning, because I don't think it's honest. There's a lot of dishonesty around BBI. It's like Muluka said, it's very amorphous, it's directionless, it's unconstitutional, it's a total waste of taxpayers' money. Now, first of all, I don't agree that we even have a constitutional moment now to amend the constitution in Kenya. Constitutional moments are many times described in the context of societies emerging from conflict, or there is an urgency to fix the constitutional order in a country. I think in the context of constitutional moment, I don't think we are in, because if you look at 2007, 2008, and the clamor for change, that for me was a perfect constitutional moment for Kenya, because the country had seen, for example, the deterioration of the laws and all that. Now, is it a priority for Kenyans, this BBI? Certainly not. Not now. You cannot say there's a constitutional moment or it's a priority because you have to accommodate a few individuals in an bloated executive. So it's not a priority for Kenya, and I can say it's not a priority because look what we are dealing with right now. We are dealing with a global pandemic where even frontline soldiers like doctors, nurses, clinicians are actually dying. And we are the only country, by the way, that even started supporting a referendum. We did not know its contents. And it keeps on changing, by the way. It changed from last year. Sometimes this year it has now changed twice. So we don't even know what bill. So for me, it's not a priority for Kenyans. Priority for Kenyans right now for me is how do we revive the economy? How do we take our kids back to school in January? How do we secure unemployment? If you tell me today that we are going to pass a law that has called unemployment insurance to safeguard people who have lost jobs and livelihoods, that for me is a priority. how to expand our healthcare infrastructure is a priority. How to ensure that there is IT, in every part of this country for purposes of now, because now we are acknowledging technology has become relevant. So, lastly, Bitok, what is the common good from this so-called proposed amendment? Because the basic principle in enacting any law or amending any law is that there has to be a common good. Whether it's a constitution, whether it's a legislation, there has to be a common good. I see no common good. I see this is just political choreography for self-preservation, to safeguard personal interest, and therefore for the common Kenyan, it's not. Like Wakili Ebli said, if you really want to increase more money to the county, we use the term at least 15%. That's a purely administrative. President Uhuru boasts of the honor of executive orders. So why can't he use executive orders to just address some of these issues? And lastly, Bitok, if we are saying that we want to build bridges, a critical question, second to that, is who broke the first bridges? Because there are people who have broken bridges in this country. And we need to know exactly who are those. Because you see, up to now, Raila, one of the proponents of this BBI, must also now come out clean and accept that Uhuru is the president of the Republic of Kenya. He must come out publicly and rescind his swearing in at Uhuru Park at a time when he has never. He has never. So how is he even building bridges when he has never even accepted a government that he now purportedly supports? It's all selfishness. Like Wakili said, if you want to know matters cohesion, diversity in this kind of inclusion, there's the National Cohesion and Integration Commission that has done all those reports. So I think let's really not live a lie in this country. Today, I wish we can just focus our efforts on how do we come out of this pandemic. Other countries are busy ordering vaccines to make sure they save their populations, but we are the only country that is just talking about BBI 2022. I think it is morally wrong for us even to entertain this discourse. And I wish we could actually drop. And like Muluka, you can count me in the no camp against BBI. If there is none already, we will form one.
Yes, and we will lead it.
Maybe it's time you threw in an alternative and say, all right.
No, but you see, but let me tell you, I've been a bit, okay, as you know that I promote Punguza Mizigo. And for me, the common good about Punguza Mizigo is that how do we reduce the burden of governance on Kenyans? Reducing the burden of governance. For example, Kenyans never said, and Mzee John retired Major said, they went around the country. Nobody told them increase parliamentarians. So that is a burden that we are adding on Kenyans. In fact, even for me as the author of Punguza Mizigo bill, I am tempted to republish that bill anytime. I can even publish it today. I think what also Kenyans need to know, to say, if we don't like BBI, let's also not be drawn into a war we may not win. The no and yes. I think we may also now need to give Kenyans an alternative. And for me, I am prepared, alongside saying no to BBI, I am happy to republish the Punguza Mizigo bill with its amendments from the 29 county assemblies.
Take signatures.
There's a genuine ethical and moral concern when you're going to divert in excess of 14 billion to a process that is not urgent or entirely transformative. And I have said, if you want to change the constitution against the advice of experts, you can tell me the law society is not supporting the amendment to the constitution. Dr. EKURU is not supporting. PLO Lumumba was here. Tell me any lawyer, constitutional law expert or governance expert, or even a rational thinker, who supports changes to the constitution that come in a very clandestine and abrupt manner as BBI has proposed. So, but let us deal with the morals first. If you're going to spend 14 billion to fund a referendum, look at what we are fighting over at the Supreme Court. It was just an increase of 4 billion. The National Assembly had approved 310 billion. The Senate had wanted only 316 billion, which was in the original CRC proposal. In short, if you divide 316 billion Bitok against the 47 counties, you are looking at averagely about 4 billion. If you're talking about 14 billion the referendum, we could fund up to 4 counties the entire financial year with that money. And we could pay all the doctors and the nurses and the teachers and our police officers with all that money. I think there's a problem with our priority matrix. And it's not, you can't corner Kenyans to a position where you take away the integrity and the quality of their voices. Those who want to support BBI, I'm totally opposed to it. Those who want to support BBI should do so, knowing very well that we have already documented the ethical, moral, and financial concerns coming at a time when you're grappling with a depressed economy, surging deaths out of COVID-19 pandemic, loss of public funds elsewhere. We're going to lose more money in a structured way now. You talked about loss of money through KEMSA. Now there's an opportunity to lose money in a properly structured way. I think the question...
And actually we will be aiding the loss of that money if we participate in this process. We are abetting the loss of money.
I think the thing is this, and as a lawyer, I'm also duty-bound to provide civic education on this matter. If you want to change the constitution, you must precede that with an honest audit of the constitution. And I think looking at the existing documents, we really have a greater problem. The disjunction lies between the law and our culture. What the constitution intends or hope to inspire and to achieve has been frustrated by a stubborn and unrepentant culture of impunity. If you address the culture of impunity, which is steeped in our system of governance, you would probably not even need BBI. And I said that very consistent, and I like what Dr. EKURU is saying. The conversation around uniting the country must be prefaced with some honest admissions. You cannot, in terms of the hierarchical order of interpretation and application of the law, the Supreme Court has the last word. As lawyers, we can agree or disagree on what a provision means. But then when we defer that to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court tells you that, listen, having looked at the law, looked at how election was managed, we are satisfied that this election is in compliance with the Constitution and the president is duly elected and has been sworn in. When you create a parallel structure and you have near fanatical support and you get to be sworn in, it doesn't matter whether you're sworn in as the people's president but in the mind of your supporters, you've already created a false dichotomy that you have another scent of power. If you want to proceed the handshake, an honest admission and apology would suffice. And it's not too much to ask for that. Again, because that didn't happen, the philosophy of manipulation and co-option and the philosophy of organizing power and governance around what is politically convenient is what is leading to so many lies. We're being told, pass this thing because it's going to improve your lives. They're not telling us that, listen, pass this thing because we want to exclude Ruto and we want to include more people in government. I have no problem with those who want to exclude Ruto. He's a politician. If he doesn't place politics right and is excluded, he will be excluded, and there's no problem with that. But if you want to, can you exclude someone politically without involving us and without asking us to pay for it? Number two, can you exclude someone without lying to us that this is inclusion when it's actually exclusion? I think honest conversation is what is lacking in this country. There's a serious disjunction between what the law hope to achieve and the reality, what we say qua ground. Qua ground, the reality is, if politicians want something, they will find a way of camouflaging that and driving that agenda until they arrive to it. So if we don't change that, we will not be able to break the system. I think change must be incubated from the bottom if we are to inspire the change from the top.
All right. Good morning.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Tunaongea na nani?
Unaongea na Godfrey Nyango.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I've been following the conversation and I like the conversation. There's something Dr. AUKOT said there. He's being tempted to republish the bill. I would encourage you to go ahead as early as even yesterday. Because what we are seeing is our country is being hijacked, okay, by the elites. And BARRACK MULUKA, you talked about the middle class. They are not waking up.
Yes.
I would encourage Punguza Mizigo, AUKOT, republish that bill, put it out there, because we are in the middle of a pandemic, and this is the time Kenyans can see the reality. Whether people are taking them for a ride, Kenyans are dying, doctors are on the street, our education system is in tatters, starting from primary school to universities. We have nothing. This country has failed. Actually, we're being classed as a failed state. We need our court republish your bill. Let Kenyans have an alternative. Let them see, do we need 600 MPs or do we need to kupunguza mizigo? Yes, and so that our court, take it upon yourself. We need the resources to be rechanneled in the right direction, such that we improve our health system, our education system. Do you want to tell me building an expressway from Lolongo all the way to Mau Summit, while people are dying, who will use those roads? That's the question. Thank you very much. Keep it up. Good work.
Asante sana. Have a good day, sir. Appreciate. Thank you. Nasikia wananchi wameamuka pia, lakini sijui wakati wa kura sijui kuna kwanga na pepo gani inaingianga. But no, even as we still take up calls, it's a question of inclusion and the things that really ail this country. And we're talking about, let's expand the talk so that we can unite Kenya and more, even as you combine with the response on the phone call. Muluka, what do you think really ails this country? Do you think we fix it by fixing the elites?
You see, we started the wrong way. I was a young boy in primary school in the 1960s and 70s when President Jomo Kenyatta used to say that he had slain an elephant. Kenyatta alikuwa anasema kwamba nimeangusha ndovu na kila mtu ni lazima aje na kisu chake aweze kujikatia kijisemu chake. That was how Mzee Kenyatta looked at Bidad Kagia and Kungu Karumba. Akawambia, look at me, look at Paul Ngei, and then look at yourselves. Were we not together in Kapenguria? See what I have done for myself. See what Ngei has done for himself. Then look at yourselves. What have you done? So we institutionalized government as a space for stealing, and we then built walls around ourselves that we use our tribes, what we call our communities, as cannon fodder and as defense shields. And therefore, based on that, government lost all sense of direction. So given that kind of arrangement, it becomes very, very difficult and very troublesome to wade ourselves out of that without a very significant paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift must begin with us, who are the so-called thinkers. You see, if you look at the age of enlightenment, the French Revolution, for example, of 1789, 1792, that you have these thinkers who paved the way forward for the nation. That's people like Montesquieu, people like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, people like Voltaire, and others, people like Thomas Paine, that they start thinking about their country and defining the way forward. I think that is what we are saying, that we need an honest middle class to broker for us a new sense of direction. Sometimes when people ask me, what do you do? I say, I'm paid to think, that I'm a thinker. I'm a thinking animal. There was the famous philosopher who said, I think, therefore, I am, je pense, donc je suis. Okay? I think, therefore, I am. We must bring a critical mass of thought together. And I think that is what Ufungamano was doing for us in the period 1995 to the period 1999, when Yashpal Gai came on board. That we are not doing, and I agree. Therefore, EKURU, you have a task nothing stops you, nothing stops us from coming up with an alternative platform. There's nothing sacrosanct about BBI. And if BBI has become a Trojan horse that is supposed to bring the political elite from 5 tribes into power, what about the rest of the Kenyan nations? What do we think about them? Don't they matter anymore? I agree with Wakili here, Steve Ogolla, that if it's about the exclusion of any one individual, be it William Ruto, be it Musalia Mudavadi, who comes from my home, or whoever else, they should be able to do that without making it our cost, and without ignoring other priorities. And
Muluka, if I can just jump into that.
As I throw it to you, EKURU, to pick some so that we can respond to it. There is someone, and by the way, there's someone as well. Kuna mtu mwingine hapa naona ana lament, sijui ni mtu ya wapi. Someone is lamenting about people disagreeing with BBI. By the way, you've been here. I've invited Paul Mwangi.
Yes, and I wanted to debate him.
Cutting corners.
Yes.
There's nobody who wants to sell BBI. I'll be honest with you. Everybody I've invited to come and sell BBI, they've refused.
Exactly.
Point blank. So when someone accuses me of bringing, I didn't even know OGOLLA disagreed with the other guys disagree. I just called you into a panel, and somehow ideologically you disagree with the document. I want to give him a challenge, Marago Senior. I want to give you a challenge. Give me someone who can sell BBI.
Let him
No, I was with Kizito here.
Let that person who is complaining calm himself.
But it's not about selling BBI. No, we're looking at what BBI has proposed. I am very apolitical, and I have no problem. As I said, in principle, there's nothing wrong with changing the constitution, because the constitution already anticipates that some changes can actually do happen to it. What we are saying is that the organizing philosophy behind BBI is a very curious and disruptive and manipulative and exclusive one, exclusive to only a few people who know the intent. But the benefit of analysis saves us the energy and the desperation of wait and see.
Yes.
You can unpack. And when you begin to unpack the real intention, while we are opening the constitution, even if you are an enthusiastic supporter, you begin to be demoralized. And I'm saying that we started this process as looking at the handshake, saying, okay, fine, not a bad thing, because there's the stability is what we need. But I hope now, after the handshake, there'll be some honest admissions of serious errors in judgment made by political elite and political leaders, and then we have conversations around that. That if we needed now to increase the momentum and redirect the conversation towards changing the constitution, then we would defer to institutions that are mandated to implement the constitution. And I was embarrassed when I saw the judiciary being cornered, an independent institution now being cornered to go and make submissions. That's a terrible low moment for the country, that the judiciary had to submit to an amorphous group collecting views on what, because they said
it was part of the legitimization, the effort to legitimize.
You must document the desperation. If you don't go and speak for yourself, you will rubbish that process. They will make recommendations that will hurt you, and no one will speak for you. So you better go and speak. But that is not to say that the judiciary or other independent organs that submitted views to that institution really sanctioned the legality, the constitutionality, and the propriety of the process. I think, in short, is it possible to shelve the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020 without any kind of extreme development circumstances? Yes, it's possible. Is it possible to animate the Constitution to implement all this proposal in the Constitutional Amendment Bill without going the referendum? The answer is yes. And how is that wrong? Is it a logical analysis that produces the outcome? Even if I say I really, by the way, I voted for Uhuru Kenyatta, I cannot tell you that. I do not support most of the decisions Uhuru Kenyatta has made, because when you look at those decisions in the context of what the Constitution has provided, he has disobeyed the Constitution, he has disobeyed court orders. I mean, you just want Uhuru to finish and go. But the person who comes in probably will extend that philosophy. Because I'm not seeing a serious political shift in ideology that you can, Uhuru will go, but Uhuru will reign. Looking at the pattern.
Uhuruism. That is
Yeah,
not a
Uhuru
person.
will
Well,
be
I think the truth for the matter is Uhuru wants to do a putting on us using this
You want to put
BBI.
in us. So
Yes,
there's
wants
something
to
I
put
want to read on women. Someone has proposed on the issues of. So I want to challenge this guy. If you want to come and tell us what is good, we've talked about the icings. But if you say the icings, we can achieve the icings without having the cake. You're saying, okay, give us the icing. We can go to parliament, legislate, and all that, without actually messing up the whole meal. There's someone who made a suggestion on Punguza Mzigo. That is Lucy Mitei, and she's saying, Dr. Okot, kindly before publishing the bill, review and repackage it. I know the bill did not haggle well with the women's movement because women's leadership was seen as the Mzigo. Just review rename it, this bill, and bring it on. People are ready for it, but you need to pick it up from
Actually,
where,
I think people did not understand. You remember, Punguza Mzigo came as a shocker to the system and to many people. That they thought, I remember, for example, my fellow nomadic pastor, Adan Duale, laughing at me, basically telling me, EKURU, bana, you, hata ukipata 1,000 signatures, come. In fact, he promised me 1 million Kenya shillings. I hope he still can keep his word. Now, it came as a shocker to the system, to everybody. But what they did not understand, we went under for about over 1 year collecting these signatures, and we applied both technology and physical form collections. Now, to Mitei, I will tell her this. Actually, if she had read Punguza Mzigo properly, one of the things that we wanted to achieve with Punguza Mzigo is to make sure the gender question in the institution of parliament is achieved. And the math is very simple. We had said that we want to amend the constitution so that in all the 47 counties of Kenya, we elect 1 woman and 1 man to the National Assembly. We create 6 special interest seats, again in those categories under 100, Article 100. Each one of those again must be 1 man, 1 woman. And that will give you 50-50 in Parliament, in National Assembly. In the Senate, we said, because we want to reduce burden, we don't want nomination, we don't want all of, because remember the operational philosophy of Third Way, Punguza Mzigo's, Punguza Mzigo was reduce the burden, reduce the cost, but also send more money to the grassroots so that you achieve real inclusivity. Now, if you consider a parliament of 147, where you have got 50 women, that's already more than a third. So we'll have achieved a third cleverly without through an election actually. Instead of nomination, because nomination sometimes came as a result of who shouts the loudest, who is close to who. We have even been told now the women who get nominated, it's becoming a very derogatory way. You know, it's becoming a very derogatory way that they could be girlfriends, mistresses of party leaders, secretary generals of parties, and we wanted to remove that from women, that tag from women, because I wanted women to walk into that parliament shoulder high, knowing that I've also been elected like you. You know. Now we talk, and for me, I'm going to revise this bill. And actually, by the way, I've already revised it. I was just waiting for the opportune moment to republish it. And I hope that people are now encouraging me to actually republish this bill. We'll also take lead in the signature collection. We have to participate. Because what we are calling on here, especially as middle class people who can watch this show on Facebook, you're not ordinary kawaida Kenyan who in the village. You're actually a person who is interacting with the real politics of this country. So when we republish this bill, I hope the people watching me here will actually take the lead in their communities, in their respective regions and places, environments, and actually collect the signatures. And we can bring change. That takes me to the second point, Bitok. Why are we all discussing BBI in the context of individuals? And I really want to persuade my brother, Steve OGOLLA here. He has repeated twice that, the BBI seems to be the exclusion of Ruto for 2022. I wish OGOLLA will tell me that he himself will want to run for the presidency of this country, because I know he's capable. He's a very intelligent person, as many Kenyans are saying, even from the comments I'm reading here. That OGOLLA speaks to one of the fundamental problems we have in Kenya. We have defined Kenya in the context of a few tiny minorities. Even BBI right now, part of the criticism around BBI and the expansion of the executive is because we are saying, no, why should we expand the executive to accommodate Suji Raila, Ruto? And part of the reason why also Ruto is flip-flopping on this BBI, because everybody knew he was opposed to it from the very beginning. He's flip-flopping because he wants to see what could I benefit from that. Maybe it's the expanded executive. Maybe if I come with a certain number, critical number of MPs, I can be either deputy prime minister or a prime minister or even the president. Now, therein lies a bigger issue that I really want us to discuss. We may not exhaust today. Why is Kenya defined in the context of a few individuals? Why can't we say Muluka Barrack Muluka here is capable, and he is capable of leading this country. He can give this country the strategic direction it needs. Now, that for me is the problem. That even the changes we are discussing here now, actually the contentious changes about this document is actually about individuals. It's not about the wider Kenyan. And I think for me, this is where we go wrong, Bitok. If we can remove the discourse from these few individuals and make it a Kenyan discourse, that how do we benefit Kenya? And I go back to the idea of making a constitution, reviewing it, writing it, even the laws must have a common good. And the common good once achieved, then we are able to build a nation state. Otherwise, today as we speak, we are just a conglomeration of ethnic identities that found ourselves in a geographical location called Kenya. That's all we are. And that's why we are being manipulated by individuals who think they own us. And the more we discuss constitutional changes, the country called Kenya, in the context of a tiny minority of people, we actually give them the title to our own lives. We are giving them the title to our own country. And that's why they can decide anyhow they want. They are shoving it down our throats, even when people are dying, when doctors are dying during a pandemic, and we are still cheering. You know, I think we are mad.
All right. I'll just extend 10 minutes from time, and now we are going to move to the tackle of the day. There's something we call tackle of the day. I don't know if you've heard about it. It is where we shoot the shots. So I'll start with you again, Muluka, with your tackle of the day. Should where needs to be shot? No fear. No flavor.
I'm not very sure I understand by the tackle of the day, but I will grope hopefully in the right direction, because we are looking at the state of the nation in all this talk. Tomorrow, Saturday, is going to be the 12th day of December. We are marking Jamhuri, and we are marking Jamhuri in a very troubled environment. It's an environment in which we have got our priorities completely upside down. It is an environment in which Kenyans are speaking, Kenyans are lamenting, Kenyans are dying, Kenyans are starving, Kenyans are broke, Kenyans are being evicted from their homes, Kenyans are stuck with bank loans, Kenyans are stuck with mortgage. But the president has abdicated his duty and responsibility to Kenyans. The person we hear speaking to us is the person who took an extra legal, in fact an illegal oath of office as the people's president. He has told us things like doctors are dying just like anybody else. He has told them to be understanding in a context where we expect that the president should be speaking to Kenyans, that the president should be telling us about vaccines, just like other heads of government and state elsewhere in the world are doing. They're doing it in the UK, they're doing it in Germany, in France. Even President Trump, for all his blemishes and curious ways of looking at things, he's also talking about these things in his country. And so we are at a very, very critical and delicate moment. The health workers are on strike, clinical officers are on strike, nurses are on strike. Doctors are going to join the strike, being joined in their own strike in a few days' time, and perhaps it does not even matter whether they strike or they don't go on strike. If the rest of the health workers are on strike, the health service sector is paralyzed, and we cannot behave as if it is business as usual. I think we need to now begin reasoning with one another, whatever the ambitions may be, whatever it is that is hidden in this BBI for President Uhuru Kenyatta, that he pushes it very hard. I sometimes get even very worried. I keep wondering, why is President Uhuru Kenyatta so determined to give and impose upon the country an imperial presidency? What is he hiding in the back? Is he hoping to succeed himself? Is he going to spring a surprise upon us at some point and say that this is a new legal dispensation. I therefore can offer myself again as a presidential candidate. What about these numbers that he's trying to impose upon us in Parliament, in the National Assembly, and in the Senate? What are all these sinister things about? I think that the president should now know that it is his tea party. It is not about Raila Odinga, who has sneaked himself into government as a co-president of sorts. It is about Uhuru Kenyatta. And when all is said and done, I think he stands a major risk of being judged by history as an unmitigated failure. If he has friends out there, family, people who really care for Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and his legacy, they should tell him that it is about time he stopped. It is about time he looked at things again. Barring which, history will judge him as an unmitigated failure.
Wow. All right. I'll go to Steve because court had spoken before him.
Well, I think the deterioration of decency, honesty, integrity, and the glorification, if you like, of impunity and ethnic solidarity largely explains the reason why we are stranded as a country, and it also explains the reason why we are likely to be more stranded at the margins of time going forward. Until we understand what ails this country, until we understand that our body politic is a huge laboratory for manufacturing lies, fraud, and falsification, that the philosophy of organizing government is not public service delivery, rather accumulation of wealth and status and prestige, you know, and co-opting your community to support that agenda, we will not be able to disrupt and displace the problems that now bedevil us. So in that context, BBI will not, even if it is voted and supported and it passes, will not inspire the kind of change Kenyans are hoping to see. Because you see, I have said, we must incubate change from the bottom if you want to see adjustments at the top. But if you wait for bottom decisions to be made and to trickle down to you, those decisions will be made in the context of the philosophy of political expediency and convenience. What is politically convenient is not necessarily what Wanjiko needs. What is politically convenient is that certain political elites that decide to prop a particular government can do so at a cost, and that the cost is you can organize the next government to accommodate those persons. And then now repackage that. Barrack said, repackage, sugar-coated, add some sweeteners, create a youth commission so that youth are co-opted, create a bloated parliament so that women are happy, give governors power to appoint CECs from the county assemblies so that they can neutralize some of the critical voices in the county assemblies, give MCAs themselves ward fund so that they have reason not to support the process, give MPs constitutional and CDF. We have more than 13 national government funds, but only CDF has been included in the constitution because it's targeting the members of parliament. Give governors more money in terms of 35%. You can camouflage the political intention by creating so many sweeteners around the process, and that is the kind of dishonesty. And I always say, it's my parting shot, change will be incubated from the bottom at the individual level when you reflect. Do you have an understanding of what your value system really is? Can you fight for your value system? Can you begin to influence from the periphery? And by the periphery, I mean your family, your community, and so on and so forth, climbing up. You know, then you can be able to see change and transformation. As it is, and this is a very grim report, this country is stranded. It will remain to be stranded until change has been incubated from the bottom. I think that for me is just the parting shot.
EKURU.
So my tackle of the day is this, and I want to speak directly to my fellow Kenyans. And I say that Kenya belongs to all of us in equal measure. Let us not surrender our birthright to just a few political individuals, because when this country goes down, it goes down with all of us. And we really need to look around us, look outside our window called Kenya, and see what's happening in South Sudan, see what's happening in Burundi, in DRC Congo, and many, many other countries. That if we don't fix the country for the common good of each and every Kenyan, we will all suffer in equal measure. These people we glorify, as Wakili OGOLLA has said, will charter a private jet and live with their families and leave us to a country that has gone under. If truly we want to help change this country, let us participate. Let us participate in politics. Let us not be the political illiterates. Let's not say that politics is bad. Because the reason these individuals somehow own us and the region that we come from is because we've become curious onlookers, bystanders for far too long. So they own the country, they own us. They are the slave masters, we are the slaves. And that's why, unashamedly, even some elected members of parliament will openly say, mimi ni ng'ombe wa kiongozi fulani. It's a shame, and I think if you really care, if you're a responsible adult, you want to see continuity in our country, you want to see Kenya for our children, their children and their grandchildren, then let's make Kenya a better country for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agot. I really appreciate you, gentlemen, for coming in this morning. I'm sorry I've kept you late, 10 minutes late. But I hope to see you again. Muluka, this is your first time here. And Steve, also, you need to keep these conversations running so that we can make this country a better place.
So one of the things you must do, yes. I've been watching some of the comments, so that people don't think that your show just welcomes people who are bashing BBI. I think you should publicly invite the pro-BBI individuals. Which I am. I can see people asking here, invite Otiende Amolo.
You're my witness. I invited, last time we had a point on a Tuesday, Junet was to come in, he didn't show up. Paul Mwangi was to come in with you.
Yes.
He's here to show up. Last time I talked to him, he told me he was waiting for the bill to come out, Bill 2020, so they could come and comment. So you see, you cannot go and pull these people. And it all tells you about leadership. So it becomes difficult at times to do, because this also says a lot about leaders, because it depends on the people who want to have a conversation with Kenyans. If you don't want to talk to Kenyans, you only want to go to political podiums and throw insults and all that. But when you're called in to have a sober discourse with Kenyans and enlighten Kenyans, and I've told these guys, come and sell, enlighten Kenyans what this whole thing is all about. I cannot do it for you. The same way I cannot do it for Muluka, I cannot do it for EKURU and all that. You have to come in and enlighten Kenyans on what you think you believe in.
Yeah, but
so I still
you're talking of someone who has called himself a cow. Yeah, someone's cow, and that cow is the cow that is leading the BBI Secretariat. You can understand the challenges when you ask the cow to now come to the studio.
So maybe Muluka, we have made history in the world that for the first time we are being led by a cow, in a meaningful constitution.
Yes.
We don't have regard for experts. We don't have respect for common sense, or even regard for experts. You know, you may differ with Daktari here, but you know he's trained in law. He's an expert. In another context, and he made a mention about his next webinar. This is someone who has written constitutions. And even if you don't respect him, why don't you just recognize the fact that he has special training that can actually drive this country forward? If he tells you, you know, I like deferring to leadership and I like deferring to experts. If experts tell you that there's a problem of conceptualization, there's a problem of framing, I mean, why should you doubt it?
It's like when a doctor diagnoses you have an headache, then you want another to tell you, no, it's a stomach ache.
There's an African adage that says, if the crocodile comes out of the water and tells the alligators and why should you doubt it? I mean, why debating matters that are settled by experts? I think if it's possible to suggest going forward, I think we need to have a broader, more detailed conversation that gears towards shelving BBI for now. We're not saying that abandon it entirely. Can we just shelve it and then start afresh, auditing the entire process? Unless you're telling me that it's serving another clandestine agenda, which is not,
but of course it
does. which you said it has. Then you can also say, then there are many ways of achieving that clandestine, and just make it open. We can actually suggest, if you don't want to root out in the presidency, that's fine. I can also make suggestions on how to exclude so and so. If you wanted those kind of suggestions without zero cost, you know. But I think that's where we are as a society.
Thank you so much, guys, for coming. By the way, coincidentally, this is the last show we are doing this year. And you guys had the opportunity to close it up. And I also appreciate you guys for coming in.
Thank you.
And other tacklers who have been with us. I really want to appreciate you guys. There's been love all over. This show is only less than 7 months old, by the way. We started, I think, around August. And here we want to appreciate that we've been able to do much more. And we hope that we're going to do much more together. We build this conversation. It's an open platform for all of us. I want to still declare it's very open for everybody to come in and express themselves. We don't trade with government. We are not anybody's papers. We don't receive sponsorship from politicians. We have an open discussion that Kenyans want and actually deserve it. So we hope you're going to have these conversations more next year. We want to wish you guys a very happy holidays and Merry Christmas. I know it's not going to be very merry this year, but anyway, it has to be merry. You know, by procedure, we have to wish you a Merry Christmas by procedure. So thank you so much, guys, for always joining in. So the tacklers who have been with us, we really appreciate you. We love you. The tackle really loves you. And by the way, in January, you're going to come back bigger. We are working on launching our channel. So next year, January tukifika, we'll be having more content, a bigger channel, and the conversation we're going to have with you. We love you guys, and you know, we hope that you're going to have these conversations more. Keep sharing the broadcast. Ukipatana video ya tackle tafadhali skuma until we close in the year. This is a tackle, and the tackle ends now. See you again in January. Bye bye. See you.